You don't expect betrayal from the person who's cried into your lap, you don't expect it from the friend you held at 2 a.m., whispering, "You'll get through this. I've got you." You certainly don't expect it from the woman you let sleep in your guest room rent-free while her marriage collapsed, but I guess the problem was, I kept thinking she was broken, and I never realized she was calculating my name is Emily Parker, and 3 months before my wedding, I found my best friend Jenna standing in my bedroom, wearing my engagement ring, not admiring it, not trying it on for fun. Not laughing about it like we used to back in college when we imagined who'd get married first. No, she was standing in front of the mirror, holding her phone out, posing, not to me, not for herself, but for someone else. Let me take you back. The day Jenna's divorce was finalized, I was the one who picked her up outside the courthouse. She got in my car still wearing her old ring, hands shaking, makeup running. "I don't know who I am without him," she whispered. I reached across the console, took her hand, and said, "You're mine now. We start over, together." I meant it. We'd been friends since we were 17. Roommates in college. Post-breakup pizza buddies, bridesmaids in each other's dreams. So when she said she couldn't afford her apartment anymore, I offered my guest room. "Stay as long as you need," I said, "we're family." She cried. I cried, and for the first month, it felt like we were rebuilding something sacred. Then small things started shifting. My fiancé, Mark, began mentioning how Jenna doesn't knock before coming into the kitchen in the morning. I laughed it off. "She's just comfortable. It's temporary." But then she started wearing my clothes, not borrowing, wearing a blouse I bought for my engagement photo shoot. A pair of heels I'd hidden in my closet for the rehearsal dinner, lipstick in the exact shade Mark once complimented. Still, I told myself, she's hurting. She just needs to feel pretty again. I ignored it, until the night of our joint birthday dinner. We're both Pisces, born 3 days apart. Mark had planned a surprise celebration, dozens of friends, candles, my favorite wine. Jenna walked in, wearing my dress, the one I'd planned to wear, the one I'd laid out on my bed that morning before heading to work. She acted like it was a coincidence. Oh my God. Twinsies. Who wore it better? Everyone laughed. I didn't. Mark looked confused. I brushed it off, again, because when you're raised to be the bigger person, you get really good at biting your tongue while swallowing your intuition. Then came the night I found the ring. Mark had gone to visit his parents for the weekend. I was home alone, or so I thought. I walked into the bedroom, ready to grab a sweater from the closet. And there she was, standing in front of my vanity mirror, hand extended, phone angled, my engagement ring on her finger. She didn't jump, she didn't look embarrassed, she just said, "Oh. I was just trying it on. Relax." Then her phone buzzed. A message preview lit up the screen. "Still fits perfectly. Think of what could have been." I saw the name, Logan, her ex-husband. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels loud. Like it's screaming between the walls. That was the silence in my bedroom that night, standing across from Jenna, her phone still glowing. My ring still catching the light on her finger. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just said, flatly, "Take it off." She blinked. "Emily, don't be dramatic. It's just a ring. It's my ring." Her eyes narrowed, smile vanishing. "You really think I want your life?" I didn't answer, because honestly, I didn't know anymore. Jenna left the room, muttering something about me being overly sensitive. I stayed there, heart pounding, picked up her phone from the vanity where she'd left it. No password, no hesitation. I didn't want to invade her privacy. I wanted to protect mine. I opened the messages. There it was, photos. Multiple. Jenna, wearing my ring in different lighting, different poses. Point 1 close-up with the caption, "Would you say yes, this time?" And Logan's reply, "You always did look better with commitment." My stomach twisted. I confronted her later that night. She was on the couch, watching a rom-com like nothing had happened. I didn't wait. "You sent pictures to Logan of you wearing the ring." She didn't look surprised. So, why? She shrugged, like it was obvious, "Because I needed to remind him what he lost by using my engagement ring." She finally turned to face me, voice sharper now. "It's not like you even appreciate what you have, Emily. Mark's practically perfect, and you treat him like he's just there." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She stood up. "You let a man like that slip through your fingers, and one day you'll regret it. Some of us don't get second chances." That was the first time I realized she didn't want my ring, she wanted My life, the stability, the routine, the man who made coffee every morning and kissed my forehead before work, and worse. She'd been watching us closely enough to know exactly where to crack it open. The next morning, Mark returned from his parents' house. I didn't say anything right away. How could I? Hi, welcome back. Jenna tried on my ring and sent pictures to her ex to flirt using our engagement as bait. It sounded insane, but so did the idea that the person I trusted with my secrets, and my spare key, was using my life like it was a rental. I spent that day avoiding both of them, pretended to be busy. Took a long walk. Stared at the lake like the answers might be written in the water. By nightfall, I couldn't hold it in. I told Mark everything. That he was silent at first, then he said, "Why didn't you tell me when it happened?" "Because I didn't want to believe it." He nodded. Then asked the one question I hadn't let myself ask, "Do you think this has been going on longer than we realize?" That night, I did a search through my messages. I started piecing things together, the small comments, the too long hugs, the accidental bumps into Mark when she walked into the kitchen, and then, one message. A text Jenna had sent me 2 months earlier, when Mark and I had a minor argument about honeymoon destinations. "You sure you want forever with him?" I had laughed it off at the time, and now, it read differently. The next morning, I asked Jenna to move out. She rolled her eyes. "You're throwing me out over a ring?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm asking you to leave because you crossed every line I thought was safe. Where am I supposed to go?" "Back to your own life. You don't get to borrow mine anymore." She didn't fight, didn't apologize. She packed in silence, took the guest towels, left my blouse and no note, just slammed the door behind her like I was the one who'd ruined something. Mark held me that night as I cried, not because I'd lost Jenna, but because I'd finally admitted she hadn't been my best friend in a long time. She'd been someone I loved out of history, not reality. In the days after Jenna moved out, the house felt quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was like the echo of something that had gone rotten long ago was still humming through the walls. Her shampoo lingered in the bathroom, her laughter, that high-pitched, performative giggle, felt like a ghost in the hallway. Mark tried to move on quickly. He made dinner, told jokes, left little notes on my coffee mug, but I could tell that he was watching me now, carefully, like he was afraid one more wrong move would make me question him too, and maybe I already was. The truth is, Jenna hadn't just worn my ring, that she'd worn her way into parts of my life that should have been protected, and now that she was gone, I realized how easily I'd let her in. There was a night, about a month after she'd moved in, when I'd come home late from work. Mark and Jenna were already at the kitchen island, sharing a bottle of wine. I remember her laughing at something he said, tossing her hair over her shoulder, saying, "You know, if I ever get married again, I want someone exactly like you." At the time, I'd smiled naively, blindly, and now? That moment was a red flag wrapped in wine and manipulation. Mark assured me he hadn't entertained it, that he never even noticed how close she was leaning, how often she made excuses to brush against him in the hallway. I wanted to believe him. I did believe him mostly, until I opened his laptop. It wasn't about snooping. It was about protecting myself. He was in the shower. I was cleaning up the table. His laptop was open, still on, a tab for emails flickering in the background. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe proof that Jenna was the only villain. Maybe reassurance that I hadn't been totally blind. I found a folder in his email archive, labeled unsent/drafts. There were half-written notes, reminders, things he never meant to send, and one draft stood out. "If this goes any further, I need to tell Emily." My heart stopped. I clicked. The message was short, 4 sentences. "She's here every day." It started out innocent. She needed someone, but I'm starting to feel something. I haven't done anything yet. But it's not fair. I have to end it or come clean. No recipient. An owed date, just sitting there, waiting to be discovered. He came out of the bathroom humming, towel around his waist, smiling like nothing had changed. I closed the laptop. Didn't say anything, and not yet, because I didn't want rage. I wanted clarity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside him, eyes open, heart pounding. His arm was around me, like always, his breathing steady, but suddenly, everything felt foreign. The warmth, the comfort, the shared weight of our years together. Had he felt something for her, even for a second? Did he wish he'd gone further? Was I a placeholder in a life that someone else just tried on? Literally, at 3 a.m., I got up, made tea, sat in the dark with my thoughts. I wasn't angry, I was numb. I'd been betrayed before, by Jenna, but if Mark Even for a second, had opened a door in his heart to her. That felt worse, because I could survive a best friend stabbing me in the back. But if the man who chose me hesitated in choosing me again, then what did that say about us? The next morning, I confronted him, softly, carefully. Did you ever feel anything for her? He froze, set down his coffee slowly. Didn't speak right away. Emily, just tell me the truth. He looked at me, really looked. She confused me. Not because I wanted her, but because she kept pushing these moments. Flirtation and I was flattered, I guess. I'm human, but I didn't want her. I just didn't know how to tell her to back off without making it worse. And the email? I wrote it when I started feeling guilty about the flattery, not because anything happened. He reached across the counter. I love you. I never touched her. I never would. I stared at him and wanted to believe him. Maybe I did, but I also knew this flirting can be harmless, until it isn't, and secrets, even if they stay drafts, still leave stains. That night, I took off my engagement ring before bed, not to punish him, not to make a scene, just because I needed to remember how it felt to have a finger that wasn't wearing a question. There's something surreal about walking through your home and suddenly not knowing where you belong inside it. That week, everything familiar felt off. The couch where Mark and I used to curl up and plan our future felt cold. The kitchen, once full of shared routines and inside jokes, now echoed with awkward silences, and the bedroom. The bedroom felt like a performance space I was too tired to perform in. I left my engagement ring on the nightstand for 5 straight nights, not because I didn't love him, but because I needed to remember what it felt like to exist without proving it. And Mark noticed. Of course he did. On the 3rd morning, he held up the ring gently. You forgot this. I didn't forget, I said quietly. He nodded, placing it back down like it was made of glass. He didn't push, and that hurt almost more, because when someone stops fighting to be understood, you realize how tired they are too. I started going on long walks again, the kind I used to take before life became wedding seating charts and joint bank accounts. I walked to the edge of the lake and sat on the same bench Jenna and I once shared during a thunderstorm in college. We'd laughed so hard that night, soaked and spinning in the rain, swearing we'd never let any man come between us. Now she was gone, and I wasn't sure if Mark was with me, or just next to me. My best friend Talia, who lived 2 towns over, invited me for a weekend stay. Come breathe somewhere that doesn't smell like betrayal and secrets, she said. I packed a small bag, left the ring behind again. When I got to her place, she greeted me with chocolate cake and a glass of wine before I even sat down. So, how's the damage? She asked, gently. It contained, I said. But still smoking. She nodded. You don't sound angry. I'm not. I'm exhausted. At him? At myself. That surprised her. So, I explained, I let Jenna too far in. I excused everything. I dismissed my instincts, and now I don't know if I even know how to recognize betrayal unless it's wearing heels in my closet. That night, Talia tucked me into her guest room like we were kids again. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, thinking, what if trust doesn't come back the same way once it's cracked? What if every future, I love you, it gets filtered through the memory of someone else holding your life like it was try-on jewelry? When I got back home, Mark had cleaned the apartment. The kitchen sparkled of fresh flowers on the counter. A sticky note on the fridge, in case you need to breathe again. I left space in the top drawer for your silence. I smiled, because even if I was still hurting, he was trying to hold me, not just fix it. We talked that night, and no accusations and no defenses, just truth. I don't know how to feel, I told him. It's not just about the ring or the photos or the draft email. It's about how easily I accepted less than what I deserved from both of you. Mark nodded, eyes glassy. You never had to prove anything to me. I just didn't know how to tell you. I felt trapped in the middle. But you didn't say anything, I said. You let me stand beside her while she chipped away at my dignity. He looked down. I thought protecting you meant not adding to the weight. But silence was the weight, Mark. That moment didn't end with a hug, it ended with understanding, and for the first time in weeks, that was enough. Later that week, I went into the guest room, the one Jenna had lived in for 5 months. I opened the closet, half empty, but on the top shelf, I found a shoebox, inside a dried flower from our college graduation. A Polaroid of us in our first apartment, making pasta. A torn envelope labeled, what Emily never needed to know. I froze, heart pounding. I opened it, inside was a letter. Unsent, addressed to Logan, her ex-husband. You wouldn't believe the setup I've landed in. She's clueless. He's sweet, and I'm just biding my time until she figures it out. Maybe by then, he'll realize I was the better fit all along. I dropped the paper. It didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like confirmation. The letter sat on my lap for 5 full minutes before I could move. Each word was heavier than the last. You wouldn't believe the setup I've landed in. She's clueless. I'm just biding my time. That wasn't the voice of heartbreak. That wasn't a friend navigating loss. That was someone who saw my life as a strategy. Not once in those 5 pages did Jenna mention love, only leveraged. My hands were shaking. My face burned hot with humiliation. I'd built a home with open doors and warm meals, and she treated it like a stage to rewrite her own narrative. And Mark? He'd been standing at the center of it all. Even if he didn't participate, he'd watched her rehearse. I placed the letter in a Ziploc bag, not for evidence, for proof, for myself, that it happened, that I wasn't crazy, that the tension I felt, the gut check moments I brushed off, had always been real. That night, I told Mark everything. That we sat on opposite sides of the couch. My voice calm, brittle at the edges. I found a letter she wrote to Logan about you, about me. She said I was clueless, that she was waiting for you to come around. His face went white. That he didn't ask to read it, didn't ask for context. He just whispered, Jesus. Then, I didn't know. But you sensed something, didn't you? I asked. You admitted. She flirted. You wrote the email. You felt guilty. He nodded slowly. Yes. I did. But I never, Emily, I never wanted her. You didn't have to want her, Mark. You just had to not protect me, and that's what you didn't do. He put his head in his hands. I stared at the floor. There were no tears and no yelling, just a painful, quiet understanding. Trust doesn't always break loudly. Sometimes it dissolves between the lines of things unsaid. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I took a pillow, walked into the guest room, the room she had occupied, and laid down on the bare mattress. The air still held her perfume. I opened the window, let the cold in. I needed to feel something honest. The next morning, Mark made coffee. He didn't bring me a cup. We were both waiting, not for forgiveness, but for the other person to make the first move toward truth. At 9:17 a.m., I broke the silence. I think we need space. He looked up slowly. Do you want me to move out? No, I said. I need to. He blinked. But this is your apartment. Exactly. I packed a bag by noon. A week's worth of clothes. A notebook. My ring, still in its velvet box, not on my hand. Mark helped me carry the suitcase down the stairs to the door. He said, I love you. I still want to marry you. I know, I said. But I don't want to marry anyone while I still feel like a placeholder in my own life. I didn't hug him. I didn't kiss him. Goodbye. I just walked out. I stayed at Talia's place again. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a toothbrush, poured wine, and let me take the big bed. The next morning, I opened my laptop and did something wild. I googled grief without death. Hundreds of articles popped up, stories of people mourning friendships, careers, versions of themselves that no longer fit. One quote stayed with me: grief is not always about what ends, sometimes it's about what we realize we never really had. I wrote it down. Then underneath, did I ever have the full version of Mark, or just the pieces he thought were safe to show me? Later that day, I walked to a coffee shop and pulled out the ring, not to wear it at TO study it at TO decide if it still meant what I thought it meant, or if it had been tarnished by association. As I held it, a woman at the next table leaned over and smiled, a beautiful stone. I smiled politely, thanks. It's just not mine right now. She nodded but didn't pry. Sometimes strangers are better witnesses than friends. That evening, I opened my journal and wrote, I believed love meant protecting the relationship above everything else, even above myself. But now, I think love should be a mirror, not a mask. If someone loves me, they should reflect the strength I forgot I had, not blur it for their comfort. I closed the book and slept the first deep, dreamless sleep I'd had in weeks. There's a strange kind of freedom in being alone, not lonely, just unattached. No shared calendar, no passive-aggressive, we need to talk, texts waiting under the silence, just space. I spent the first 3 days at Talia's apartment reclaiming that space. I ate when I was hungry, not when dinner was supposed to be served. I wore pajamas till noon. I opened a bottle of wine without wondering if it would start an argument or a passive lecture about weekday drinking. I lit a candle. I sat on her balcony with my journal and asked the question I'd been avoiding for months. What would my life look like if I stopped making room for people who wouldn't make room for me? The next morning, I opened my email, buried between subscription promos and automated reminders. One subject line stopped me cold. From Logan, Jenna's ex-husband. I stared at it for a full minute before clicking. The message was short, respectful, but haunting. Hi Emily, I heard about everything from mutual friends, and then saw your name tagged on a local thread. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, I should have warned you sooner. I saw the same patterns, the same games, but I didn't think she'd hurt you. You didn't deserve to be part of her recovery story. You deserved your own. Logan. I sat back, exhaling slowly, and not because I needed his apology, but because it felt like the final puzzle piece confirming that it was never about me being too sensitive. It was always about her being too calculated. That night, I called Mark, not to fight, not to accuse, just to share the message. Thought he was quiet on the other end of the line, then said, I wish I'd seen it sooner. We both did. I replied, I still want us. He whispered, I want me first. I said. There was a pause, but this time, no sadness in it, just clarity. Over the next week, I made a list of things I'd given up while trying to be the perfect partner, friend, fiance, dance class on Thursday nights, weekend hikes, alone, solo travel ideas, writing short stories, laughing at jokes that weren't filtered through someone else's comfort. It was longer than I expected, and by the end, I was smiling, not from loss, from recognition. I could still have all of it. If I wanted it. Talia, who had been quietly observing me transform from shell to shape, said, you know, you're glowing in a very non-engaged woman kind of way. I laughed. What does that mean? It means you don't look like someone trying to earn love anymore. You look like someone who finally remembered she already had it, in herself. Later that day, I walked past a boutique eye in the window, a ring tray. Handmade ceramic, painted with the words, not all rings are promises. Some are reminders. I walked in. Bought it. No hesitation. When I got back to Talia's, I placed my engagement ring on it for the first time, not as a commitment, but as a conversation. Not a few days later, Mark asked to meet, neutral space. A park bench between our apartments, and no pressure. He brought coffee, sat down. Looked like he hadn't slept well. I've been reading, he said. About trauma. About betrayal. About emotional weight, and I think I never realized how heavy you've been carrying, the both of us. I stayed silent. He continued, I didn't cheat. But I didn't protect you either, and I know now, silence is complicity. It is, I nodded. But I'm not here to punish you. Then why did you come? To see if we could talk. Without pretending we're still who we used to be. He exhaled. Nodded slowly, and are we? I looked at him, his familiar face, the kind eyes, the slight wrinkle that only showed up when he was scared I'd leave. I don't know yet, I said. But I'm not afraid to find out. That night, I wrote in my journal, healing doesn't mean going back to what was good. It means going forward to what's true. I don't need revenge. I don't even need closure. I just need to choose me, every time. And for once, that was enough. It had been just over 6 weeks since I moved out. 6 weeks since I stepped away from the version of my life that looked perfect on paper. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was instructional. It taught me that grief doesn't only follow death, it follows disillusionment, and I was grieving the idea that love, romantic or platonic, had to hurt to prove it was real. One morning, I received a message from the Women's Center of Willow Bay, a local organization that hosted monthly circles for women navigating life transitions, breakups, burnout, betrayal. Someone had submitted my name after reading a short blog I posted anonymously titled, The Woman Who Tried on My Ring. They didn't know the real Jenna, they didn't know it was me, but they said my words hit like truth and left a mark. The invite read, we'd be honored if you shared your story, in your own words, on your own terms. I stared at the email for almost an hour. I had written the piece as therapy, not testimony. I wasn't looking for an audience, but the idea of standing in front of a group of women who might understand, who wouldn't question or excuse what I went through, stirred something in me, a sense of power and fear, because once you tell the truth out loud, it doesn't just belong to you anymore. It becomes part of someone else's healing, too. Talia found me sitting on her couch that night, laptop open, fingers frozen above the keys. You okay? They want me to speak. You should. But what if it's just more reliving? What if talking about Jenna keeps me stuck in it? She shrugged. Or what if it unsticks someone else? That stayed with me. I said yes. 2 weeks later, I stood in a sunlit room filled with folding chairs, lavender tea, and the quiet ache of women learning how to begin again. There were no cameras and no microphones, just a circle. I didn't name names but didn't say Jenna or Mark. I simply told the story. I opened my home to someone I thought was safe, and I didn't notice the small moments when she started erasing my place in my own life. It started with lipstick. Then clothes. Then attention, then the ring. Heads nodded, hands clenched, and no one looked surprised. When I reached the part about the message she sent her ex, the one that said, "Still fits perfectly," a woman across the room covered her mouth and whispered, "Mine did too." I paused, met her eyes. "You're not crazy," I said. "You're just not the villain of your own story, no matter who tried to rewrite the ending." The room went still, then a single clap, then more, a not for drama, for recognition. Afterward, one woman approached me, mid-50s. Gentle voice. "I lost my best friend to my ex-husband too," she said. "But I never told anyone. It always sounded like gossip, not grief." I nodded. "It's both." "How did you get over it?" I thought for a moment. I didn't. I just stopped standing still. Inside it. She smiled, took my hand, and just like that, I realized I hadn't shared my story to shame Jenna. I'd shared it to set myself free. That night, back at Talia's, I sat on the balcony with a blanket around my shoulders. The stars were out. My phone buzzed. "Mark, I'm proud of you, whether we end up together or not. Thank you for being brave enough to know what you deserve." I didn't cry, I just whispered, "Finally." I wrote in my journal, I thought justice would feel like revenge, but it feels like calm, like saying, I know what happened, and I'm not afraid of it anymore. It was raining the night Mark called, not heavy, not dramatic, just a soft, persistent drizzle. The kind that didn't soak you immediately, but slowly crept into your clothes until you had to acknowledge it. "Can we talk?" "That's all," the message said. I stared at my phone. Then stepped outside, no umbrella, no excuses, just instinct. We met at our old spot, the bakery 3 blocks from our apartment, the one where we used to argue over whose turn it was to get the almond croissants. He was already there, not in his usual coat, not cleaned up or rehearsed, just him raw, waiting. We sat in his car. Neither of us spoke at first. The radio was playing something soft. A woman's voice humming through static. I watched the rain streak down the windshield. It felt like a metaphor, memories blurring, slowly washing down. Then Mark finally said, "You look like you're sleeping again." I smiled faintly. "I am." A pause. "I didn't realize how long it had been since you weren't carrying all of us." I turned to him. "I didn't either." He leaned forward, elbows on the steering wheel. "I keep thinking about that night when I saw the ring on the tray. It hit me that you hadn't worn it in days. And I panicked, not because I thought you'd leave, but because for the first time, I understood why you might." He looked at me carefully. "You didn't stop loving me. You just stopped believing I could protect what we had." That sentence cracked something open. I turned toward him, fully. "You let her into our home, Mark. You saw the way she hovered, how she mirrored me, the way she twisted herself into a version of me that wasn't real, and you let it slide, because it was easier than facing how fragile we actually were." He nodded. Didn't defend himself. Just listened. "I know," he said. "And that's what I regret the most. Not a kiss. Not a lie, just the space where I should have stepped between you and the damage." The rain kept falling. I looked out the window again. "I keep wondering," I said, "if we ever really knew what we were doing. Or if we just liked the version of ourselves that made sense together." He thought for a moment, then said, "We were in love. But maybe not equipped. I think we believed commitment would protect us from fractures, but it doesn't. You do. I do. And I didn't." His voice cracked on the last word. "I still love you, Emily. But more than that. I want you to love yourself again, even if it means walking away from me." We sat in silence again, but this time, it didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like respect, like two people who had finally put every truth on the table and didn't need to beg each other to stay or go. I reached into my bag, pulled out the ring box, opened it slowly, held it between us. "This has been a symbol for so many things," I said. Safety. Fantasy. Shame, but I want to ask you something. Not as your fiancé, not even as your partner. He nodded. Ask. If we were starting over today, no history, no expectations, no performance, would you choose me all over again? He didn't hesitate. Yes, because even when I didn't protect us the way I should've, I never stopped seeing you as home. I blinked back tears, and I would choose me first this time, but I'd still want you to find me at the end of that choice. We didn't say anything more. He drove me home at the door. He didn't ask to come in. I didn't offer. We hugged, slow, grounding. The kind of hug that's not asking for anything, just giving a moment of peace. Later, I placed the ring back in its box, not as an answer to a bookmark, because the story wasn't ending. It wasn't even resuming. It was just pausing at a chapter where both people finally decided to tell the truth. That night, I journaled. Maybe forgiveness isn't erasing the wrong, maybe it's standing beside the wound and saying, I still see value here, I still see life, and maybe, just maybe, I still want to build from this. 2 weeks after that rainy night conversation with Mark, my phone rang with a different kind of storm. It was a call from Everwind Press, a mid-size publisher based in Seattle. Apparently, my anonymous blog entry, The Woman Who Tried on My Ring, had been passed around behind the scenes. They found it raw, unpolished, but electric. They wanted to talk. By the end of the week, I was staring at a real offer, a developmental deal, to turn my personal story into a memoir. 6 months in Seattle workshops. Editorial support. I paid advance. A solo apartment included no strings, just an invitation. To tell my story on my own terms, away from everything. I sat with the offer in silence. It felt like a dream, but dreams are strange after betrayal. You squint at them, waiting for the trap. I didn't call Mark right away. Instead, I went back to the park bench where we'd last spoken, notebook in hand, questions swirling in my head like autumn leaves. Could we survive the distance? Would the space be clarifying, or fatal? Had we healed, or just patched things in prettier fabric? When I finally told him, he didn't flinch. He smiled, wide, real. You have to go, he said. That's not what I expected you to say. Because you still think love means holding someone still. He reached for my hand. Go right. Go live. I'll be here, not as your anchor, but as someone who believes in your tide. I stared at him. And if I come back changed? Then I'll love who you become. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a vow. It was freedom, and I never had that from someone I loved before. The night before I left, I walked through our old apartment one last time. I didn't cry. I lit a candle, placed the ring on the tray one final time, not out of sadness, out of gratitude, that I had once believed in love, and now I knew I could believe in myself. 2. Seattle was gray and crisp and full of strangers who didn't ask where I had been. I walked the streets alone, wrote for 6 hours a day in a small rented studio with ivy in the windows. The memoir came in pieces, not in order. Some days I wrote about Jenna, other days about Mark, but mostly I wrote about me, the parts of me that never made it into group texts, or brunch recaps, or Instagram captions. I wrote about the weight of being the safe friend, the polite one, the understanding 1. The never says no one. And how dangerous that role becomes when you start to confuse it with your entire personality. I submitted the first 50 pages. The editor called me the next day, her voice breathless. Emily, this isn't just a breakup story. It's a blueprint for how women lose themselves by trying to be everything, and then, how they find their way back. I smiled. That's what I was hoping for. Mark and I texted most nights, sometimes long paragraphs, sometimes just photos, the sky, his coffee, my view of the ocean. We weren't clinging, that we were witnessing, and that felt more intimate than any love I had ever known. Then came his message, I'm visiting Seattle next month for a work thing. If you want, I'd love to see you. No pressure. No expectations. Just a bookstore. And you. My heart raced, but not from fear, from curiosity. Would we still feel like us, without the scaffolding of routine and shared groceries and passive familiarity, or would we finally meet, for real, without the noise of who we used to be? That night, I stood at the window of my apartment. The Space Needle blinked in the distance. I opened my journal. You can love someone deeply, and still choose yourself boldly. The two aren't enemies, they're just different types of truth. I met Mark at a little bookstore tucked between a flower shop and a vintage record store. It was the kind of place that smelled like old pages and pinewood floors, the kind of place where time didn't press against you. He was already there, holding 2 lattes and nervously rearranging a copy of The Velveteen Rabbit on a display table, when he saw me. He smiled, but not the eager smile of someone hoping to be forgiven. It was gentler, the kind of smile you give someone you used to dream with, the kind that says, even if this isn't forever, I'm grateful you happened. We didn't hug right away. We just stood there, let the air between us say everything first, then he handed me the coffee, still oat milk, no foam. You remember? I never stopped. We sat in the reading nook by the window, just like we used to on rainy Sundays, except now the silence between us wasn't strained. It was full, aware, mature. I told him about Seattle, the gray skies, the first draft. The strangers who didn't know me as someone who flinched when the word bride was said too casually. Yet he told me about the apartment, how he replaced the couch we bought together because, in his words, it was time for something new. For both of us. We laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that came with a lump in the throat. After a while, he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out something wrapped in tissue. I know we're not rushing anything, he said, and this isn't a proposal. Not yet, but I wanted to give you something. I hesitated, opened it slowly. It wasn't a ring. It was a key, his new place. Only if you want it, he added quickly, no pressure. I just wanted you to know that my door is open for your story, for your space, for whatever we want to build together, but freely. I stared at it, not because I was unsure, but because no one had ever offered me something that wasn't tied to a script. It wasn't, move in and become my wife. It was, come and be yourself, with me, not for me. That felt like love, not the version that smothers, the one that expands. We walked the waterfront afterward, the wind curled through our coats. He reached for my hand, but waited until I nodded. It felt new, familiar, earned. You seem different. He said, I am. Better? No, I said. Just, more me. As the sun set over the bay, I turned to him. I need you to understand something, I said. If I come back to this, I'm not the woman who cried quietly in a bathroom while someone else wore her clothes. I'm not going to shrink again, not for love, not for peace, not for anything. He looked right at me. Good, because that's the version of you I fell in love with. I just hadn't met her yet. We didn't kiss, not yet. We just kept walking, not towards something scripted, just forward. A month later, my memoir was picked up for publication. They asked for a new title. The original had been about betrayal. About rings and rooms and people who crossed lines, but I knew now. This story wasn't about what happened to me. It was about what I rebuilt from so I called it, The Quiet Exit, and everything I found after her. On launch day, I stood in another bookstore, Mark by my side, my name on the banner. A stack of copies near the entrance, and behind the counter, the same ceramic tray I bought months ago, the one that read, not all rings are promises. Some are reminders. I didn't wear the ring that day. I wore a small gold band on my middle finger instead, simple. Clean, something I'd bought for myself in Seattle, because now, my commitment was to myself first. Final journal entry. Dated 6 months after I left, she wore my ring, but I wore the cost, and in the end I kept the one thing she could never touch, my voice. Emily.